Hi there, and welcome back to A Sin for Business, where we discuss trending and overlooked business topics. I'm your host, Kristyne, business communications professional and veteran support aficionado. Today, in honor of June being a National Safety Awareness Month, we will be discussing safety in the workplace in this episode. And with us today, we have Brittanie Showers, Loss Prevention and Safety Manager at Palmetto Goodwill.
Hey, how's it going, y'all? Thank you for having me.
And how's it going over there today?
It's good. We just had our monthly managers meeting for the One Goodwill. So we just got finished with that. We had some good topics, brought up some stuff about safety and workers' comp, and had some good food. So this was just in time for this podcast.
What a great segue. So what were some of the topics they brought up around the safety awareness?
So one of the things is just to make sure that safety is the top priority when coming into work. We want to make sure that everybody comes into work, leaves work the way that they came in. And one of the things that we've been working on is lowering our workers' comp costs. So we have actually lowered the workers' comp cost by $250,000 since last year. I just ended up getting a team of 6. I've got 3 safety specialists, and then I have 3 loss prevention specialists. And my 3 safety specialists have done a fabulous job of managing cases and just making sure that we're doing the follow-ups for the team members that have been injured and making sure that they're getting the care they need. And then just making sure that we're following them till they get to maximum medical improvement, or MMI. And then just making sure that we're getting them back to work at the same way they were before they got hurt.
That's great. Amazing progress and improvements there.
Thank you.
What are some of the things that you guys are implementing to try to prevent these injuries and workplace accidents?
So one of the things that we've started is so my boss came in about 2 years ago, and he is a safety guru with tons of safety experience. And he actually implemented a full safety management system. And we have stuff like observation checklists, which we can have team members at the store. Like one that we have is a forklift checklist. So what we do is we observe somebody on a forklift and see if they're doing safety activities, such as wearing their seatbelt, making sure they're using the horn whenever they're coming into a pedestrian walkway. When they've got a load that's obstructing their view, we just make sure that they're driving backwards and looking behind them while they're driving backwards. So the observation checklists are one of the things that we've created. We also have started doing hazard reporting. So with the hazard reporting, we've been able to have the stores kind of buy into it. We have cardboard and plastic gaylords, and they're just essentially boxes full of product. And we have actually had the team members at the store are paying attention to misstacked gaylords, stuff that might be leaning improperly. That can be a safety hazard. We've had a couple of team members mention trip and fall hazards, such as like cracks in the sidewalks, holes in the ground. So the hazard reporting is another one. We're working on rolling out near miss reporting. So we've already got that going, but we're trying to get that more involved at the store level. So with near misses, it's just an event could have happened if the circumstances were correct. So an example would be if I was standing under a shelf and a box fell next to me. It didn't hit me or cause an injury to me, but it could have. And so what we're trying to do is get those near miss reports so we can look at the hazards that would create these incidents and make them injuries, and try and get away from that so we don't have injuries.
I love that. It's like using things that happen that could have been really bad to help do that those preventative measures that take place. And that's really great. That's really important when it comes to like workplace injuries and accidents, and can be implemented. That's something that any company really could implement, not just like in a retail or warehouse situation, but you could have near misses in an office. You can have near misses if you're a truck driver and you're going to and from place, if you have a company owned vehicle. That's something that can be implemented across industry. So that's really amazing. And you said you guys are getting ready to roll that, like it's in practice, but you haven't like officially rolled it out yet.
It's been rolled out, but we're not really 100% with the involvement. I think we need to do a little bit more training on near misses before we're going to get that involvement, because a lot of it is sometimes difficult to understand what would be a near miss versus what would be just a hazard. So we are, it's kind of semi rolled out, but we're wanting to do a little more training. And one of the things that we've started doing is we'll do one pagers. So we just recently had one where a team member was loading a truck, and the top Gaylord was missing the slats at the pallet that holds it, and the whole load tipped over and fell. And so we put a one pager out. Yeah. And we put a one pager out to just kind of show, hey, this is the near miss. This is what happened. This is the lesson that can be learned. And one of the things that we were able to do is assign a corrective action, which is what we're trying to do with all hazards and near misses. And a corrective action is just that, it's correcting the action that caused the hazard. So for that one of the things that we did is we worked closely with the transportation director, and we were able to create a checklist to look over pallets to make sure that they're not damaged, so they're okay for use when loading the Gaylords. So we're trying to basically learn from what we do have, and then trying to avoid having new stuff happen.
Yeah. So does that one pager go out to like all the store managers, and then they disseminate that information to like their retail staff?
Yeah, so we send it via email, and then we have safety boards at each of the stores. So we post them on the safety board, and it goes to the retail stores. We have contract sites, which are on some military bases, and then it goes to the main office. We have career opportunity centers, so it goes there too. So it is company wide, so everybody is able to see it. And we've had some pretty good feedback on it. And I think it's been helping.
That's great. So with that, like you said, it also goes back to the main office. So what are some safety concerns that differ? Obviously, there's going to be different environments in the main office versus a retail store versus one of the warehouses. So so what are some of those safety differences in like each of those environments?
So the main one is we don't have as many hazards at the main office as we do the stores. The stores, we have a lot of trip hazards, cut, puncture, strain sprains. Those are our biggest ones. Strain sprains and slips, trips, and falls are the two biggest ones that we have. So we don't really have the strain portion as much in the main office, but one of the things that we have different in the main office is we can have more of the muscular skeletal diseases, such as like carpal tunnel syndrome from being on the computer too much, neck strain from being at a computer too long, back strain from sitting improperly. We haven't had many cases. I don't think we've had any cases of those, but that's one of the things that differs from the main office, is when you have more of those clerical positions, you're getting into like the overtime injuries, such as like carpal tunnel syndrome, which is messing with your wrist and from, being at the keyboard all the time. We do have a little bit of slip, trip, and fall. We have stairs at the main office on each side of the building. So we have had somebody kind of trip down the stairs. They didn't fall, but they kind of tripped over their feet. And of course, with the grade changes in the pavement of the parking lot, we've had some slips and trips there. And I would say those are the main ones that would be at the office versus retail.
Mm-hmm. And just for our listeners, the main office is where their administrative positions. So their HR, their safety and loss prevention, their marketing, all of those like administrative positions within a company. Those are all located at their main office, just for clarification purposes. And then they have their retail stores, and they have warehouses where they store things. And you guys have you guys have training facilities as well. Is that right? Like the CDL facility that's like back behind the main office.
We actually don't have the one down Rivers anymore. I think the CDL might be in a different place than it was before. But yes, we do have some of those training, and we're doing more. We've got an Excel center now for adult high school. And then we also just built a second warehouse too. So we are going to be doing more with that when we finally get it open.
That's great. Is the Excel Center up and running?
It's going to be opening August 8th, I believe. We just actually talked about it today. So they are in the finishing stages of setting up. I think they said we have about 400 applicants that are wanting to come. So it's almost ready.
That's that's fantastic. I know that's been a long time in the
Yes.
works, and that's going to bring its own safety checklist, I'm sure. Have you guys started talking about what type of safety measurements to put in place at the Excel Center?
We have, so one of the things that I believe we're going to have there is an on-site daycare. So we're getting into a little bit more of like safety with children. And then of course your emergency action plans, such as, weather related. I hope it never happens, but like an active shooter situation, anything like that, that would typically, workplace violence. So we're going to have some of those to deal with, I'm sure.
Yeah, so lots of training coming in the future.
Yes.
That's great. And so we touched on this a little bit about slips. You said slips and trips and falls are something that's kind of across the board. What are other things that would be across industry you think that people could be on the lookout for or work to prevent? Like, I know you mentioned the most common ones are the slip, trips, and falls. Does anything else come to mind that you're thinking, like, and no matter what type of work environment you're in, these are some things that you have to look out for?
Yeah, I would definitely say strains and sprains. I think that's another one that's really big. And I mean, that can be from just improper lifting. I mean, you can sprain your ankle from walking down the road. And I would say those are the other big ones. You know, you just got to make sure that you're lifting within your limits. And also, if there's anything outside of your limit, you get a buddy to help you lift. But it's definitely one of the things we're trying to do right now is just really teach proper lifting form. One of the things that we had discussed is maybe getting some like stretching papers on like the doors in the stores to kind of show how to stretch. Because that's another big thing is the strains and sprain injuries that we're seeing a lot of. And it's just, we have unique items that we're getting at the stores. We have these huge pieces of furniture. Some boxes can be filled with books. So that's definitely one that we're trying to focus on right now.
That's great. I love the idea of putting up some stretching posters because
Yes.
it will help encourage people to like stretch more throughout the day. They'll walk into the break room, be like, oh yeah, I should do a quick stretch, I love that idea. That's something I am terrible about remembering to do is it's
Me
not until like I
too.
have to get up from my desk where I'm like, oh man, I could really use a stretch. I'm feeling a little stiff here.
Yes.
So what are so that's a good segue into my next question, which is what are some things that managers and supervisors can do to encourage their employees to take safe practices?
Definitely make it a priority with leadership. That's the biggest thing is when you have your team leads and your managers that show they care about your safety, it's a little bit easier for everybody else to care too. So that's one thing. Definitely setting time aside and talking about it. Toolbox talks, huddles on the weekends, huddles in the morning, making sure training is being done. I mean, safety just has to be top priority. And I think that's the best way.
Yeah, it's great. And so for you, I think you said you're kind of new to the safety world. You
Yes.
spent a lot of time in loss prevention. So what have you learned since getting into the safety industry that was surprising to you?
Um, just how much is involved. When I first came into safety, I thought it was just store audits and going out doing store audits, because that's what we did with loss prevention, is we would go out and do audits. But there's just so much more. You've got to do the audits, and then when you do the audits, you've got to do the corrective actions, which are follow-up actions to make sure that the hazards and the opportunities that you find on the audits are fixed. One of the things that I really learned is the corrective actions. Is you can't just go in and do an audit and see an item and just say, okay, I saw this, and leave. That was the biggest thing, is, hey, when you find these things, you have to fix them, and you have to find a way to kind of make sure they don't happen again. And in addition to the audits, we also deal with workers' comp. There was a lot behind workers' comp that I wasn't aware of. One, the cost it's insane how much workers' comp costs, especially for just like a simple cut, because if you have stitches or sutures that you need to get at doctor's care, that's a bill. And then you've got a follow-up, and then you've got restrictions. And I think that was the other thing, is realizing that when you get an injury, there's more to it. You've got restricted work duty that you've got to offer modified duties for. It's just not as simple as, somebody gets hurt and they go home. There's a lot to it. It's a lot of time and a lot of energy. And it's just easier to kind of make sure that safety is at the forefront, so you don't have to deal with this stuff later on, because it's a lot of paperwork too. We have go packs, which are basically incident investigation reports, and it's about 10 pages to fill out per injury. So that's another thing, is, the injury is also just a bunch of paperwork, which nobody really has the time or wants to do.
Right. Paperwork's the least favorite part for most like store managers, operation managers,
Yes.
People who like to be out in the field and doing things with their hands. They're like, I don't want to sit down at a desk and do this paperwork.
No.
The workers' comp, you said did it decrease from last year to this year?
It did. And one of the things that I don't want to brag about, but kind of like a pat on the back, and it's my team too, is we've actually had people request to get taken off workers' comp, because there is so much to it. There's so much to it. I mean, there's doctor's appointments, there's follow-ups, your physical therapy. It's a lot if somebody gets a serious injury. And so, yeah, I think that's been one of the coolest things, is people just like, please, I don't want to be on this anymore. So it's definitely decreased. Yeah, it's decreased. And I mean, I've got my team to thank. They do a great job with managing cases and following up. I mean, they're doing a really good job.
And so is that workers' comp decrease because your team is doing all like these follow-ups and checking in with the individuals, and they're like, this just isn't worth it anymore, like because they were trying to milk the system or something of that sort?
Yeah, and that's one of the other things, is and unless it's an injury that the doctor puts them out of work or they're hospitalized, we get everybody back to work when they get injured. So that's kind of another thing, is it's not as simple as just, I'm hurt, I'm going to go stay at home. We do, every team member that gets injured, we take the restrictions that the doctor gives them, we look at their job description, and we modify their duties based off of the restrictions. So everybody that gets injured that can go back to work, we get them back to work as soon as they have that doctor's appointment. So that's also helped with the lost time claims, because the lost time is where you're starting to really spend the money, because we're essentially paying a portion of their salary for them to not be there. So in addition to that, we're having to hire other people to kind of fill that void when they're not there. So it's like double cost sometimes. So we've been able to definitely lower the cost just with missed time cases alone.
So that in turn helps the bottom line of the revenue for the company and their incoming versus outgoing expenditures.
Yes.
So that's another reason why, if managers didn't believe that safety was important, bottom line revenue is another reason why safety is important, and why you should take it seriously and really help your employees understand why safety is important. Not only is it a benefit for your health and your physique, but also for the company.
Definitely.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about but you think people should know when it comes to safety in the workplace?
Just keep your eyes open. I mean, anything can be a hazard. It's just, it needs the right conditions. And that's the biggest thing, is just make sure safety is at the top of your mind when you go into work, and also look out for others. I mean, if you see something as simple as like something on the floor that could be a trip hazard, pick it up. Try not to walk past it. I know sometimes people get busy. So, if you can't get to it right away, just let somebody else know so they can do something with it. But that's the biggest thing, is making sure that you're not only looking out for yourself, but you're looking out for your teammates also. Because sometimes you'll be able to see stuff that maybe they don't know about or they're not seeing. It's a collective effort at the end of the day.
Yeah, that reminds me of my first time giving a presentation after leaving the military. So in the military, we start every presentation and brief with a safety brief. So even if it's in a classroom, you still have to do a safety brief, like safety brief, there's extension cords on the ground, watch the corners of desks, like, silly things like that, but that there sometimes some people need those reminders to watch your feet. And so the first time I gave a presentation after leaving the military, I started with a safety brief, and everybody in the room kind of looked at me like, why are you going over these things? But it was because it was instilled in me when I was in the military that you start everything with a safety brief so that people don't get hurt.
Yes.
And while I did get some eyes and things of that sort when I did that, it also kind of brought awareness to the fact that there's everyday hazards that could be as simple as like somebody has a cord stretched from one wall to another, or there's like if you work in like a cubicle area, right, and they have something that's sticking out of their cubicle a little bit, somebody could walk by, bump into it, or trip over it, small things like that. Or a spot of water on a slippery floor, all these things that are part of your everyday life. And they just become like these mundane, we get complacent, right?
Yes.
In our days and forget to look for these things.
Well, and that was one I should have touched on with the office. So we have had an injury. It was about a year ago, and the filing cabinet was left open, and somebody's pants leg got caught on it, and it caused them to have a knee injury. So it's like you said, just something simple that you don't think of every day. I mean, it was a pretty significant injury because they fell on their knee, and I mean, it was painful. So
yeah, knees are no jokes. Those injuries are hard to heal.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming on today and sharing your safety wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me, and it's good to see you again.
Yes, you as well. It's been nice to catch up.
Yes.
If you have a topic you'd like to discuss, drop it in the comments below. Thanks for listening to A Sin for Business, where we discuss all things business.
Do